Hello everyone, welcome to Share the View's Nature Photography Awards. Thank you for helping us celebrate images from our 10th anniversary International Nature Photo Competition. I'm Wendy Chattil, director and creator of Share the View. Soon we'll meet the photographers of the 20 prize-winning images and hear the stories behind their photos. And our judges will provide insights into why each one was chosen. I've seen photo contests from both sides. I've won some major ones, I've lost some, and I've created and directed quite a few competitions in the past 20 years. I work with a wonderful team made up mostly of volunteers, and together we plan Share the View for months, always aiming to make it better. This team makes the contest happen, but the photographers make it successful. And what I love about Share the View is the opportunity it gives everyone. The photographers earn a platform to show their wildlife and nature images. It also gives those of us who see the photos a chance to, well, share their views. That experience takes us to all those places, if only for a few moments. Share the View has two purposes. One, recognizing talented nature photographers and their breathtaking images, both coming from around the world. But Share the View doesn't just recognize the award winners. We also spotlight the full collection of 250 highest scoring images on our website, because there are a lot more awe-inspiring photos that deserve to be seen. Every day, a different one is featured on the homepage. When you hear the photographers' stories and the judges' comments about the 20 prize winners, remember there are 230 additional recognized photos, each with a powerful story behind it. To celebrate our 10th anniversary, we doubled the prizes and awarded 20 photos a top award, starting with a $1,000 grand prize. This year's additional prizes were provided by generous sponsors who I'll acknowledge during the program. Our second purpose is to provide financial support to nonprofit conservation groups that work to preserve our natural world. For our 10th anniversary, we selected 3 organizations to receive proceeds from the contest's entry fees. The first one is African People and Wildlife, based in Tanzania. Funds from the 2020 contest support their Northern Tanzania Big Cats Conservation Initiative. Bird Conservancy of the Rockies is our second beneficiary. Based in Colorado, home to Share the View, they protect birds and their habitat in the Rockies, Great Plains, Mexico, and beyond. And our donation helps their biologists and scientists raise awareness about bird conservation. And our third organization, Lighthawk, provides pilots and planes at no cost to conservation groups in the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. Share the View's donation benefits Lighthawk's 4 initiatives: wildlife survival, oceans and coastlines, landscapes and rivers, and estuaries. As we all know, 2020 was quite a year. The Share the View contest ended in December 2020, and it was clear from the entries that photographers didn't stop visualizing or creating remarkable nature images just because travel was limited. Some of the entries reflect the year's natural events, such as massive forest fires and the Inoue comet. We also saw a lot of compelling subjects taken close to home. A number of the prize-winning images are from the challenging year 2020, and others represent an earlier time, perhaps discovered or rediscovered during the extra days and weeks we had to explore our existing files. I don't know any photographer whose sole purpose for taking nature photos is to enter photo contests. If they're like me, they love nature photography because a camera gives them enjoyment and a purpose to be in nature. Sharing photos with friends and family and reliving experiences through them are additional rewards. And sometimes our images can even make a difference, like saving a habitat or illustrating a threat to an animal species. What each photo means to us is personal. As a photographer, we witness that moment in time, but it takes courage and confidence to allow our images to be critiqued and judged in a contest. So thank you to all the entrants who provided the wonderful opportunity to share your moments with us. Fair and experienced judges are critical to a contest, and our judges are well established in the field of nature photography. Their decisions are based on decades of experience. Let's meet this year's judges. Amy Gulick is a multi-award-winning photographer and writer. She's a columnist for Outdoor Photographer magazine and author of Salmon in the Trees, as well as her new book, The Salmon Way. Amy is a founding fellow in the International League of Conservation Photographers. She's also the recipient of the Philip Hyde Grant, the Daniel Hausberg Wilderness Image Award, and the Voice of the Wild Award. Marc Muench is an internationally renowned landscape photographer whose talent also encompasses wildlife and adventure sports photography. Marc is well known through his 11 books and many other publications, and ESPN outdoor shows. He's taught more than 100 workshops around the world and shared the North American Nature Photography Association's Lifetime Achievement Award with 2 other generations of his family. George Lepp is one of North America's best-known contemporary outdoor nature photographers, as well as a leader in the field of digital imaging. He's been a pro photographer for 50 years and is proud to be among Canon's original explorers of light. George is field editor of Outdoor Photographer magazine and recently received the North American Nature Photography Association's Lifetime Achievement Award. We'll begin with the 10 overall prize winners. Our grand prize of $1,000 goes to David Bates for Who Are You Looking At? David's caption is, "After spending the early morning fighting mosquitoes, I suddenly had the feeling I was being watched. When I turned around, this barred owl stared at me from a post and then took off."
So here's our grand prize winner. There is nothing I do not love about this image. This is a rather common species, but we're seeing it in a very unique way. I don't think I've ever seen any owl in this pose before. It's not just the pose and the composition of the animal and the fact that it's looking straight at us, and all of that is working beautifully. But then to top it all off, the light's just gorgeous, coming through its wings and accentuating the pattern.
When you're looking at a group of images and you get to see them all first, you're not judging them based on their individual appearance, but it's in reference to everything that's been created. Once it grabs your attention instantly, it stands apart from everything else. This one, in particular, stood apart from all the other images for all 3 of us. There's this critique that something can't be dead center in the middle. And so I love the fact that it's broken the traditional rules of photography.
To have a grand prize winner, you've got to have all 3 judges agree completely. And that was the case here. The animal is interacting with the viewer, and it wasn't flying away from us. It was kind of talking to us.
First, I want to start by saying how thrilled I was when I received the email stating that my barred owl had won. I forwarded the email to my mother and my father and my wife and my kids and my photography friends. And it was an incredible way to start 2021. Thrilling, exciting, incredible. So a lot of this is luck and good fortune that I caught the judges on the right day who were in the mood for a barred owl. This barred owl is also a very special image to me. I felt when I looked in the back of the camera, it was looking right through me. There's a special connection with the eye contact of this barred owl. Of course, the wings are very unique in how it framed itself. Almost like I asked it to pose that way. In my wildest dreams, I hadn't envisioned that. I'm incredibly blessed and lucky. It was a location in terms of the Everglades I'd visited many, many times. Some with success, some without success, always with great friends. So I see that picture. I not only remember that barred owl, but that morning, how many mornings we'd left the house at 3 o'clock in the morning to be down in the park, first light, all of the opportunities, all the times I had screwed up the opportunities and had the wrong settings and lost focus and missed the picture. And then when I downloaded this image, it was the culmination of all that practice leading into one image where I was thrilled with the settings and thrilled with the pose. And when I look at that photo, it fills me with all the good times.
We awarded 4 first prizes, beginning with this one, titled Neoweiss Shiprock by Fernando Boza. And Fernando describes the photo this way. It will be another 6,800 years before we see this comet again. Here it's seen over Shiprock in New Mexico.
This is a well-known landscape formation, but portrayed in a way I have never seen before, and none of us will ever see again. We tend to think of geologic formations as happening over very long periods of time, which they do. And then we've got this beautiful juxtaposition between geologic time and cosmic time. This just makes me ponder deep time.
When I heard about this comet coming, I tried really hard to think of where I could go to line it up with something, and I couldn't come close to anything like Shiprock. Just the alignment of these two elements, the comet and then our Shiprock, is pretty amazing. And even where the comet is coming into Shiprock off the lower right shoulder there, it's perfectly positioned in my opinion. So kudos to the photographer.
Anyone who's been in New Mexico, in the central area where Shiprock is always just amazed at the spirituality of this location. And immediately saw that when I looked at the image. And then there was this bonus of the comet right above it in a perfect position.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Fernando Boza, and I'm very excited to be here. This picture shows Comet Neowise and Shiprock in New Mexico. Each very beautiful in their own right, but together I thought they made a very special image. I find it very fascinating and humbling to realize that things that seem permanent to us, such a rock-solid mountain, are actually evolving and changing all the time. For example, Shiprock is what remains of an ancient volcano. And it was not the whole volcano, but just its core that used to be underground. And as erosion peeled layers and layers over millions of years, this is what remains. And it's just a short drive and hike away from Shiprock at Bisty Badlands. The Badlands are dry with these beautiful rock formations, yet 70 million years ago, it was a lush forest. And you can see the remains of petrified trees all over the Badlands. Equally as fascinating and humbling is to observe the night sky. You'll be 6,800 years before we see Comet Neowise again. I think that's fascinating, and it's a reminder that we have very little control over what happens in the universe as a whole.
Here's a first prize titled Wild Alaska by Molly McCormick. Her description is, an early morning salmon hunt with the coastal brown bears at Lake Clark National Park.
If you took the bear out of this image, it would still be an incredibly beautiful, calming, peaceful image. I feel like I'm looking at a watercolor painting. And then the bear and its reflection is just the icing on the cake. This reminds me of paintings of a famous Canadian painter, Robert Bateman. When I first saw this image, I actually thought it was a painting. So at home, where it lives, this one really takes my breath away.
I wanted to call it the painting award. It definitely goes in the realm of something that looks like it was a painter's imagination, and to capture that in film or on digital file is wonderful.
There's a painter named Bitterstadt from turn of the century who did Western landscapes. This image immediately spoke to me as one of these iconic landscapes of the West. The lighting of it, the composition of it, and then here comes this bear in the perfect position.
Hello everybody, Molly McCormick here from Molly McCormick Photography. I wanted to thank everyone so much for the amazing feedback on my first prize winning photo titled Wild Alaska. I actually took my very first trip to Alaska in August and was able to see the bears catching salmon in Lake Clark National Park. A lot was luck, but that particular bear actually was going the opposite direction, and a sow and 2 cubs were coming towards it, so it decided to reroute and turn around and happened to walk right into my frame. I mean, the lighting was perfect, the timing was perfect, the fog gives it that moody, serene feel. I felt so fortunate to be able to get a shot like that, and it really kind of encapsulates what Alaska is. Photography has been a passion of mine ever since I was young. To me, it means all sorts of things. It's a form of therapy for me. I actually am in recovery for alcoholism, and I'm almost 6 years sober. If you're patient and you love what you do, opportunities are going to happen. You never know what you're going to get. Mother Nature is going to throw in things that you're not used to, whether it's weather or timing. You just got to be patient, and those moments will arise.
Dave Sanford won a first prize with Angelic Azure, taken in the South Pacific Ocean, Kingdom of Tonga. Dave says, "This humpback whale effortlessly glides closely past me like a 747, her playful calf above."
I do a lot of underwater photography, so I know how special and gorgeous and beautiful the underwater world is, but I also know how incredibly difficult it is to make really strong, good underwater images that do the underwater world justice. It is very, very difficult. What I particularly love about this is the light reflecting from the surface of the water down below the water, and the rays of light dancing. This just sums up how otherworldly and beautiful the oceans are. Everything about underwater photography is hard.
The whale in the foreground is perfectly lit, and the fact that you can see the nose and the eye, and then of course the young little guy in the background is positioned perfectly. So this one had a lot of intrigue to me. What matters is the composition, the light, and that's why I think we came up with the first prize winner position for this one.
Many photographers have been able to go to Tonga and swim with the whales, and they come back with these spectacular images out of this clear water. What made this particular first prize winner exceptional was that the youngster in the background there is in the perfect position. The whale in the front isn't just a full-sized whale, you're actually intimate with it, but then you can see the whole youngster behind it. The composition is what really makes this image.
Hi, my name's Dave Sanford, and I'm a photographer from London, Ontario, Canada. What's special about this photo is the encounter that surrounded it. I was in the Kingdom of Tonga in the South Pacific, and this was the very first day that I was swimming with humpbacks and my camera, something I've dreamt of my entire life. And this was kind of near the end of the day. We'd been with this pair for about a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes at this time. And it was my turn for my next drop in. I dropped in, and it was sort of a magical scene that I saw unfolding in front of me. This mother and her calf approached me. As they're approaching me, my eyes were lighting up thinking, oh, this is going to be a really beautiful moment. And emerging out of these bubbles, I just saw this giant eye of a humpback whale, basically a couple of meters in front of my face. It was like the moment kind of froze in time as she looked at me, and I'm looking back at her. Momentary connection between a whale and myself. Very grateful for the judges awarding me this first place for it.
Another first prize is Fun for All Ages by Thomas Vigayan, photographed in Koepping, India. Langurs are very common, but waiting for the right moment is very challenging and takes lots of patience.
It's always difficult to capture behavior and interaction among 2 or more animals. And here we have 4 that are all interacting beautifully. What a shot.
This little guy swinging from the tails at the bottom is just hilarious. It just takes your eye a minute to study what's going on, and then all of a sudden you realize what's happening, and it's a good chuckle. So it was a good other first prize winner.
This image isn't just a picture of langurs in a tree, but it also has a lot going on. The composition is excellent with the three up in the tree, the one below in just the perfect spot. But when you look closer and it draws you in, and pretty soon you start laughing because of the fact that the youngster is hanging from the two tails. Any image that can catch your emotions and make you laugh is a bonus.
Hi, my name is Thomas Wiggin. I'm a nature photographer. This is my favorite picture. Whoever has seen this picture, I see a smile in their face. The playful little one hanging on two of the tails of the adults. They are known as the gray langur. I took this picture in a forest called Koepping, that's in South India. My purpose of doing wildlife photography is I use this as a weapon to advocate the unseen world. Whenever somebody sees a picture of these beautiful animals, it creates an awareness to preserve them. Like, not everybody can go into the jungle to see all these, but if we can just bring out a picture and show it to the public, these are the beautiful things out there, it creates the need of preserving them.
Then we move to 5 second-place prizes, starting with Fire in the Sky by Hilary Bralove. This sunset was captured as the Cameron Peak fire roared to the northwest of the city of Loveland, Colorado. The clouds were all formed by the smoke and fire.
The caption was very helpful for this one. It helped me realize that this beautiful sky is being created by smoke from wildfires. A lot of different elements going on here that all combined to make a very strong, beautiful image. So this is the second prize winner and a beautiful landscape, but upon closer inspection, the colors, the formation of the cloud, you're realizing, oh wow, the color is from smoke. It appears to be a very calm, serene, almost watercolor-like painting upon first seeing it, but then something more catches my eye and makes me stay on this image and really made me take a second, a third, and a fourth look. I like to call images like this a terrible beauty. Terrible in that it's the destruction of the largest wildfires in Colorado's history, and just this remarkable beauty. And I think it's almost the contradiction of these two concepts, you know, beauty and destruction, that holds my eye and draws me into this terrible beauty.
I know this coming from California. These atmospheric conditions change so dramatically when these fires take off, and they create these huge clouds of smoke that turn into clouds themselves. And so to see this over this pristine lake, I thought told a good story about Colorado wildfires and how it changes such a beautiful landscape into this rather dramatic, ominous look. And I love the sun rays coming up and reflecting in the water as well. Telling a story in a landscape picture is what elevated this a few notches in my book.
Hi, I'm Hilary Bralove. I'd first like to thank the Share the View community for their hard work and dedication towards nature, conservation, and education through photography. I've been interested in photography ever since I was a little kid with my first Kodak and Stamatic camera and Polaroid, and I've always been someone who's been out in nature and loving it. Photography has allowed me to view the natural world in a way that I never would have before that, and I'm thankful for that. My image, Fire in the Sky, was created on September 5th due to the natural disaster of the Cameron Peak Fire, which was the largest wildfire in Colorado history. On September 5th, I was looking out of my back window in northern Colorado. We all could see the smoke and watch what was happening with the fire as it encroached closer and closer to all of us. On that particular day, something was different. The smoke was unbelievable, and the plume was starting to stretch out across the sky. Throughout the day, I kept watching as it got more and more intense. And that evening, I decided to go to a local lake to try to capture a reflection at sunset. What was so unusual about that evening was without the fire, there would have been a clear blue sky. The fire created all of its own weather. Everything in the image was a direct result of that fire. I captured the image looking at a natural disaster in a beautiful way. It was just nature being nature, and I felt grateful being able to capture that moment in time.
The second prize is Tom Ingram's photograph, Grizzly 399 with 4 cubs. 399 was photographed in a snowstorm with her cubs just after leaving the den.
I love that this is in a vertical format and there's a lot of space above, because that space is being filled by the winter scene. This juxtaposition between winter and grizzly bears that should be hibernating, that really catches my attention. To see 4 brand new little cubs with mom is pretty special. Bear 399 is world renowned. She's an older bear, and here she is plugging along with 4 new kids.
This bear has become quite popular, and for wildlife photographers to have access to some wildlife like this in a national park is pretty unique. It's a great scene with the telephoto lens. Everybody's in focus. The proportions of the foreground compared to the background where all the falling snow is revealed, that compositional element helped this image quite a bit as well.
She's kind of a moment in history.
My name is Tom Ingram. I'm so honored to be recognized by Share the View for the Grizzly 399 with her 4 cubs photo, taken in Grand Tetons National Park. You know, I've always been passionate about photography. Throughout my life, I've always loved being outdoors with wildlife. I've had many hobbies that keep me out in nature, so I've always stated that nature took me to photography, not the other way around. You can see how she teaches while she leads her cubs out of the protective den and into the bigger world. I admire her. I want to honor her by capturing these moments. This photo of Grizzly 399 and her cubs is special to me mostly because it's her. It's 399. She has become a legend thanks to conservationists and photographers such as Tom Mangelson. She has her own Facebook page and Instagram account. Her mothering skills have become legendary. With her fame and age, there was concern that she might not make it through this past winter. So when she emerged with her quadruplets this past spring, there was a lot of excitement. I remember then just sitting in this icy puddle, staring and smiling at 399, trying to send her this mental message of thank you for letting us share you. When it all comes together like this, it's magical. It's a moment like this that makes us all love nature photography.
Then we have Mirror, Mirror on the Wall by Kaitlin Klingbeil in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. A red-spotted purple butterfly landed on a trunk's chrome bumper at a trailhead. The reflection caught my eye as it appeared the butterfly was investigating itself.
This forced me to take a closer look. I wasn't exactly sure what I was looking at. Am I looking at one butterfly? Am I looking at 2 butterflies? Am I looking at a reflection? How often would you even see this? If it does happen frequently, who even notices this? A beautiful butterfly reflection on your truck's bumper. I think for the photographer to be that perceptive of what was going on a truck and then to be able to capture it is pretty special. The caption also helped me realize just how special this image is. I would not have known this if the photographer didn't include the caption.
And another second prize winner is something that took a little while for me to understand was what was going on here. I think that as you study these pictures, the way they were created becomes a big part of the story for a judge. It's perfect in the fact that it's just stuck on the bumper of a vehicle and looks so beautiful.
Photography is my time to be fully creative. I can get out of my head and immerse myself in nature while searching for all sorts of animals to photograph, which is a great stress reliever. Animals are always doing all sorts of adorable things, and the reward of getting a great shot after so much effort is the best feeling. What makes this photo special to me is the reflection of the butterfly. When you first look at the photo, it's not immediately clear what the butterfly is reflecting in. When I saw it perched upside down on a truck's chrome bumper, I knew I had to capture that moment. You won't get better at anything without consistent practice, and you won't see many special moments in nature without consistent photo trips. These don't need to be to exotic locations. Sometimes there are amazing opportunities right outside your door. I also get a lot of enjoyment out of sharing my photography with others to show them how beautiful nature is and to hopefully encourage them to get out and see it for themselves. I hope that in doing so, people will care more about the animals and the environments that they live in.
And a second prize by Andy Nguyen, who captured My Home. Andy's description is, a newborn sandhill crane finds comfort under the wings of her mother.
This image is so strong, it just speaks for itself. My eye is immediately caught by the baby chick's eye. I'm drawn into that. But I think just as important, if not even stronger, is the element of the detail of the pattern of the mother bird's feathers. A strong element of this image are the feathers themselves. The detail, the light, the overlapping layers of the feathers, the color, they're so perfectly overlaid. That's part of what makes birds so beautiful. We don't often really get to see close-up detail of a bird's feathers.
Capturing the two elements here together told a fun, unusual story. Raising these little ones is difficult, and it has all kinds of messages about how the youth feel welcome and warm inside those wonderful feathers.
This newborn sandhill crane is cute on its own, but when it starts to peek out from underneath the parent's wing and it becomes a complete design element with an eye looking out at you, it just is much more compelling.
Hi, my name is Andy Nguyen. I'm a heart attack survivor. For all my adult life, I've been studying and practicing the art of photography. It is one of my favorite photos because it's the only one of its kind. In all the years I've been doing wildlife photography, I still haven't been able to capture another photo of this subject that aligns time and space and all the technical and artistic aspects of photography. Photography has been a companion on my personal journey. It documents my life. Photography is an opportunity to show those at home certain events or moments which otherwise they might not get to see. And photography is a way for me to preserve memories. This is an emotional, special milestone for me because it's the first major award I've won since suffering from a heart attack and subsequent heart failure that almost ended my life. Thanks to my family, thanks to all the fans for lending words of encouragement day in and day out.
And the final second prize was awarded to Geoffrey Schmid for Alien Tidelands, photographed in Olympic National Park. The upturned sandstone shelves and sea stacks are unique to the geology of the area.
I'm rather partial to this region of the world, but because I see it all the time, it takes a special image to really get my attention and make me take a second look. The foreground element of the sandstone shelves at low tide, the texture, the leading lines that then draw me into the background image, and then of course the beautiful sunset light. I lingered on it for a long time.
At first, I couldn't tell that it was a fire. I know sunsets can be warm, and sometimes people push that warmth slider a little too far. but certainly not in this case. I know that color and I've seen it many times. And so all that combined with this great foreground made this, lifted it up a few notches and became second prize as well.
Hello, this is Geoff Schmid, and I'm talking about my photograph, Alien Tidelands. I think what makes it special is the geology. The upturned sandstone shelves there, created by continental subduction and then further eroded by the elements, create a lot of leading lines, especially at low tide, that I can use for wide-angle photography. It's great fun, and I love to go back there every chance I get. The particular slab that I'm using in this shot, I don't know if it's been named before. I did give it a name, though. I call it the radiator. What really makes this photograph for me is the conditions caused by the rather devastating wildfires we've had over the last few summers here in the Pacific Northwest. The weather inversions that lock in the haze and smoke from those fires also contribute to some fantastic sunsets and some really colorful conditions. What photography means to me is therapy above anything else. Most of the time I go alone for hours or days at a time. If I'm feeling depressed, you know, in my urban pursuits, I usually know it's because I need to plan an adventure. It is crazy how many places and locations have been changed irreversibly over my short lifetime and the time that I've been doing this. I found that some of the photographs and images that I've created, the places are not there. There is a need for conservation always, and if photography can be a means of bringing that to light and getting more attention for conservation, then I want to do everything I can.
In addition to these 10 overall prizes, we added 10 optional categories for the 10th anniversary and awarded a $250 prize to the highest scoring image in each one. Each category was generously sponsored by a nature organization, which is featured and linked on our website. Every entry in Share the View was in the running for the 10 overall prizes, but if an image fit a category, it could also be entered for a category prize. A lot of subjects get lost among the big three topics in most contests, the big three being birds, mammals, and scenics. So our idea for adding these optional categories was to expand the scope and visibility of the broader group of nature wildlife subjects. Our first category is Ocean Life, sponsored by the Sea Dock Society, for a scenic or wildlife image in an ocean environment. And the winner is Diving Gannet by Conrad Dickinson in the Shetland Islands of Britain. His caption, "Gannets get in a feeding frenzy when they sense there's food nearby."
They're incredibly fast when they're underwater. And to not just get one gannet diving here, and particularly the one in the foreground, just incredible capture.
If the person was just underwater at the right time, when these guys started to dive for their food, or they were in a raft holding a pole down, it doesn't matter. What we're looking for is something that stands apart from the other images. And the timing of this is remarkable. To capture something like this at that moment makes it stand apart from many other images. So the composition of having this one big bird right in the foreground who's diving must be right in front of the lens, and then the other guys in the background diving. So it just put all that together, and it was an easy pick for Ocean Life.
A little scary having birds coming by this fast, considering that you're using a wide-angle lens and they are very close. And that's in the UK. The water was cold and not as clear as you'd like it to be. You don't see a whole lot of underwater images from the UK.
It's Conrad from England. So what's special about the winning photograph for me? It was all about the action and the proximity of the birds. You know, you've got to imagine you're out in the wild, cold North Sea, at a point as far north as you can get in Britain, the most northerly island. And suddenly the sky becomes full of diving gannets all around you. And then this action just gets more and more intense. A friend of mine made a telescopic pole that I could attach to my Nauticam underwater housing, and I had a trigger so I could lower this over the side of the boat and capture this high-speed action. I've got to be honest that the temptation to get into the water was too great, so I hopped over the side with my wetsuit on, and having all of those birds around you in the ocean, it was just a tremendous experience. I mean, the one thing I've really discovered that animals and birds, they're much smarter than us humans. They've got these raw instincts that we've actually lost, you know, sort of our way of behaviour in modern society. The other thing that I've realised is that so many species, especially in Britain, have declined and even disappeared since I was a boy. I mean, that's a very loud siren call for me that we have to protect the environment, protect the animals and give back. And our photography is a great way of giving back to nature.
At the other end of the spectrum is our category Aerial Views, sponsored by Cloudridge Naturalists. And the criteria was nature images from a free-flying perspective, such as a plane, drone, or balloon. Kerrry Koepping photographed this winter, titled Glacial River Ice Blue Morph. The scene was in Iceland, and the caption, "Glacial runoff creates a torrent of ice and water."
I absolutely love any kind of image where I'm not exactly sure at what height I'm looking at something. For all I know, it could be a mud puddle, and I may be 1 foot, 2 feet away from it. This kind of image holds my attention. We tend to see things at our own eye level. And so to see something from this point of view is just exceptional, because it's not the way that we see the world. And there's so many more things going on here that make it so strong. Just the muted colors, the beautiful patterns. This is another gorgeous watercolor-like painting.
This image stood out because it's graphic. It's very beautifully composed. I'll also comment on this photo about judging in general. Whenever you photograph something, you know, you've got to get the technique right, of course, but that's just a given. If you don't get the technique right, then it's hard for a judge to go beyond that. And then, of course, we look at whether it's something we've seen before. And if it's a common item that all of us have seen, then that's a big hurdle to step above all the other images that we've seen. That's why sometimes original thinking, even though that's more difficult, can have more effect on a judge.
When I'm doing landscapes, I'm looking for leading lines. I'm looking for things that walk me through an image. You could be standing there looking down at your feet. You could be in an airliner at 30,000 feet. It's color, it's shapes, it's forms, it's pure design.
My name's Kerrry Koepping, and my image, Glacial River Morph, was the category winner for aerial photography this year. Glacial River Morph is special to me because it evokes more questions than it answers. Upon its release, it became an icon for climate literacy. What is it? Is it real? Is it happening? Is this climate change? Why does it even matter? All great questions. As a visual storyteller, photography provides me the tool to communicate on a deeply profound, yet easily understood level. It's more than pretty pictures. When people are educated about climate change through the visual truths, it makes them personally accountable. It makes people climate literate. I found my voice through nature and environmental photography about a decade ago, when I came across what was then an anomaly in the foothills of Denali. Permafrost melt above timberline in the form of polygon hummocks. I realized then that as visual communicators, we had the means and the responsibility to bring about an understanding of the mysteries of science. I've been fortunate to be involved in bringing the visuals of climate change to the world at large. But this visibility makes us all accountable.
The North American Nature Photography Association sponsored the pollinator category, which shows a pollinator in association with pollination. The winner is Vaughn Larsen. It's titled The Ornament. And here's Vaughn's description. This little calliope hummingbird perched after a hearty pursuit of nectar, which resulted in this pollen beard.
While I'm fully aware that hummingbirds are important pollinators, I've never seen a hummingbird covered in pollen before.
This one was kind of a no-brainer. This beautiful little guy is just covered in pollen.
What better way of saying pollinators than to show an animal with all kinds of pollen all over it? A calliope hummingbird, in the beauty of itself, would draw your attention, and then dust it with the pollen, and you've got an exceptionally good story about pollinators. Calliope hummingbird is a perfect example of a pollinator, and it isn't a whole lot bigger than a larger bumblebee. And for that reason, as it gets all the way down into a flower, it's going to completely cover itself with pollen. So as an example of pollinators, it's one that you might not have expected, and that's probably why it did very well in this category.
Wow, what a privilege to be here virtually in front of you all, many whom I've followed and admired for several years. What an enormous undertaking. Thank you for your efforts. From the time I was 5 years old, I was taking pictures of airplanes, dragonflies, butterflies, basically anything that could fly with my Kodak Instamatic. In our household, if you didn't capture it on film, it didn't happen. To me, it's a language, one that allows me to preserve and convey a story that I'm unable to put into words. I was in pursuit of a rufous hummingbird. I had set up on the edge of a wildflower garden specially planted to attract pollinators. While I was waiting, I heard a different sound coming from a hummingbird in the top of a barren tree. As other hummingbirds approached the flowers in the area, he was chasing them off. However, after one of these chase scenarios, he returned to a lower perch, and I could see that he was a calliope hummingbird. Over the next 10 days, I returned nearly every morning and evening. I noticed he had a large increase in the yellow spots around his lower neck. I was concerned he might have a fungus or a disease. But upon closer study of my images of him feeding on flowers, I realized how deep he was going into the blossoms, often beyond his eyes. This was causing the pollen to be deposited low on his neck and not on his face or bill. It's these encounters with nature where I realize how blessed we are to experience and share these moments with the bird and with other people.
The Urban Wildlife category was sponsored by the Colorado Urban Wildlife Photo Club for images that show nature's presence in a human-made environment. This unusual image by Leah Lee Inoue was taken in Jakarta, Indonesia, is titled Bat Hand on Rebar. Leah spied this fruit bat on an outdoor clothing rack in between t-shirts.
I had to take many looks at this to figure out what it was. This is where captions are very helpful. We don't always need to see the entire animal in order to make a strong image. This is one of my favorite images of the entire contest. And the fact that the photographer chose to portray this in black and white just makes it that much stronger, because then it really makes this image all about texture and tone.
It's so remarkable. It looks like some scene taken out of an old Hitchcock movie. If you look at those old movies, they're so well lit and everything is so well composed. This one does all that. And I love the fact that it's taken in Jakarta, Indonesia. It's just somewhat of an exotic location as well. But that didn't have any relevance on our judging of this. What we all were struck by, and myself, was just how gnarly it looked. It really did tell a story about wildlife caught in the middle of our urban environment. And you can see this, you know, there's just this one hand, almost looks like an alien, stuck in the middle of our urban jungle. So this was an easy pick for urban wildlife.
This particular image is a minimalist way of saying urban and bats and a whole different composition.
I've loved photography since I was in high school, using it as my craft, as my art for that long. I just enjoy it so much. I like learning new things. I saw it as I was actually tourist shopping. I was just looking at t-shirts and clothing, and it was in an outdoor market. And there it was hanging from the clothing rack. It surprised me so much. And, you know, fortunately, I always carry a camera with me, so I was able to shoot it. I mean, I think that's like my tip for younger photographers is just always carry your camera. And I'd never seen a bat that close up, a wild bat, that I don't think I'd ever be able to duplicate. And I think they're great. I mean, I think they're cool creatures. You know, bats, a lot of people don't like bats, but I like bats. So I took the shot. I'm just like over the moon because this is the first year in years that I've decided to finally start showing my things. I had one gallery showing a couple of years ago, but that's been it. And so I've just started again. So I have a lot to show, and I'm just so appreciative that people are enjoying the work.
Polar Regions was sponsored by Cloud Ridge Naturalists for wildlife or landscapes from the Arctic, subarctic, Antarctic, or subantarctic region. Dave Sanford created Somerset, taken on Somerset Island in Canada. Dave's caption reads, "I witnessed a true test of determination. This mother polar bear patiently guided and aided her two cubs as they switched back up a 90-degree cliff face to avoid male bears on the sea ice below."
To me, a striking image is one that makes me pause. It forces me to spend more time on it, give it a second look, a third look, a fourth look, really ponder and almost immerse myself as if I'm stepping into the photograph itself. This photograph makes me feel as if I have stepped into the scene. I never tend to think of polar bears as being something small, and yet here they just look, you know, like these tiny little animals in this immense scene.
I love the compositional elements in this one and the little bears on land. Processing on this is perfect. Having the rocks dark and the polar bears stand out.
Images that tell a story and tell it very quickly are ones that find their way up within a photo contest. These three polar bears on this rock face immediately tell you that there's no ice to be found, there's no snow to be found. Whenever we see images these days of polar bears, we think of their plight in climate change, and this image really brings that out. And the contrast of these three polar bears, two youngsters and an adult on this rock face, just stands way out and says, "Where's the ice?" and tells the whole story in a very stark, dramatic way.
I was very fortunate to have two winning images in the Share the View competition. What's special about this image to me, again, it's an animal which is near and dear to me. Polar bears have been, you know, by and far my favorite animal since I was a young kid. I've got to spend a lot of time with polar bears. We were sailing through the Northwest Passage. I was on an expedition. We were in just outside the mouth of Bellot Strait, which is a key part of the Northwest Passage. We were stuck in ice, in sea ice, and we ended up having to call the Canadian Coast Guard to send an icebreaker to come and set us free. The next day, when the icebreaker came, once we had just got through to the other side, we noticed off in the distance on a cliff a polar bear mom and her two cubs. And she was leading them on a trek up and over this cliff face, which was almost a 90-degree vertical climb for them. And we think that the reason that she was scaling this cliff with her young cubs was because there were so many male polar bears on the ice below. We basically stayed in our position, which allowed me to get the photographs before we continued to move on. And It was at quite a distance. I was using 600 mils of focal length with a converter on there, and in the resulting photo, which is a full frame photo, I mean, they're just three tiny little specks on this massive cliff, which they were scaling, and they safely made it to the top and up and over and out of harm's way from the hungry male. To place in a competition like this with animals that are most near and dear to my heart means the world to me. So I want to thank the judges.
The private lands category was sponsored by the Images for Conservation Fund for a nature photo taken on private land within the United States. Deanie Miles photographed "You Lookin' at Me?" at the Boardman Tree Farm in Oregon. Her caption reads, "Photographing this tree farm had been an autumn tradition. This particular year, I saw the deer roaming through the landscape, and I was happy he took a moment to freeze, allowing me to photograph him in the beautiful setting."
I can't even imagine what it took to get this. Was it one of those just being in the right place at the right time and a deer just happened to walk, right in and amongst these rows of trees? It's just one of those incredibly serendipitous moments we all hope for when we go out. Even without the deer, this would still be a striking image. The vertical format just perfectly frames, the verticalness of the trees.
I didn't know exactly where this was captured, but my first impression was that it was going to be something captured in private lands because of the straight rows of the trees. I love the story of this, and I'm glad it was a category, and this shot told both of those aspects perfectly. So great private lands category winner.
Trees lined in this manner are generally not thought as a natural area, but this wooded lot has these rows which have fascinated me as I've passed by this particular property. And to see a deer down one of these rows, framing it in the way it has here, makes a wonderful composition.
Danny Miles provided this commentary for us to read. Wild deer lived in and around the Boardman Tree Farm. Instead of a natural forest, they planted renewably harvested poplar trees for years. Animals in the area were free to roam among the trees. In 2016, it was phased out and sold, and now it's sustainable farmland. Denny says, growing up in Washington State, I always had an appreciation for the nature that surrounded me. A camera inspires me even more to get out there and document beautiful moments on this fascinating planet. I hope my photography will inspire others to be in nature and appreciate and protect it. I couldn't be more thankful for this award, and I'm honored. Migratory Birds category was sponsored by Cloud Ridge Naturalists for any of the 1,093 species included in the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. The winner, Julie Picardi, calls this image "Down the Hatch." And she says, a female mountain bluebird brings a tasty snack to her chick. With little place to land, she struggles with the delivery.
All the elements in here are so strong. The intimacy between parent and chick, the food source itself in the parent's beak. I absolutely love the setting in which this is photographed. The texture and the color of the bark matches the texture and color of the birds themselves. It's almost a black and white image. That little bit of blue tells us that this is a bluebird species. And then just the beautiful color and rim lighting on the chick's beak. Those two complementary colors, the blue and the yellow, are quite striking. This is the kind of image that I want to put on my wall, and I know that it will bring me great joy and pleasure looking at it every single day. And I also know that I will never get tired of looking at it.
The quality that I think we all agreed to was how the birds have this kind of gritty look to them with their hairs ruffled, or the feathers ruffled, that matches the wood behind it. First thing you see is this huge mouth ready for food. So this was a great choice for for migratory birds.
What brings your eye right into the picture is this yellow mouth of the juvenile. The reason for that yellow mouth is so that the parent finds and sticks these insects right down into it. And that's what draws us to that part of the image.
Hi, from White Sands National Park in New Mexico. I'm Julie Picardi. I shot this image in our backyard in Franktown, Colorado. My husband and I live in the Black Forest, and we have many species of birds that visit us throughout the year. One day we saw a pair of western bluebirds flitting back and forth from an old dead tree. As we got closer, we noticed that there was a baby chick there, and the parents were making numerous trips back and forth to feed the little guy. That's how I named the image Down the Hatch. I've always loved the outdoors, and I feel very much at peace when I'm out in the field with my camera. I feel like my soul recharges. Sitting quietly, reflecting on a landscape like here in this beautiful White Sands. I think that being still and absorbing the moment is more important than getting the shot. I want to thank my husband, Jim, who has been my greatest fan and my best teacher. Without his help, I would still be struggling with aperture values in my dyslexic brain. I feel that when we submit images to photo contests and social media, we are acting as stewards of our environment. Thank you so much.
The Sense of Place category is sponsored by Cloud Ridge Naturalists. This is for a wildlife subject within a scene that connects the viewer with the animal's environment. It should speak to where the animal lives. The Three Bears is by Nancy Arehart, and it was photographed at Poquoson Lakes National Wildlife Refuge in North Carolina. Her caption reads, "Mama and her cubs cross from one cornfield to the next."
So many things are working here. The light, beautiful, the composition, the fact that there are three bears. I love the shallow depth of field. We know that they're in a cornfield, but both the foreground and the background are blurred. It's accentuating the bears.
The three black bears, the adult with the two youngsters, are in a place that I would never have expected them, and traveling between two cornfields gave me a different sense of where these bears were traveling, and maybe a different food source. The composition caught my attention, the story caught my attention, and that's why it did well in this category. I would have never come up with North Carolina. I wouldn't have thought of the bears being there. I wouldn't have thought of the cornfields being there.
In 2020, when we were forced to stay close to home, I found a local wildlife refuge and found that I spent 50 days observing the behaviors of the black bears. In this particular moment in the photograph, I was very proud to see the growth and maturity of the young cubs. Mama had worked very hard to teach them the way of the world and to keep them safe along the way. The bears are walking very proudly and confidently, and it makes me very happy. Others might see this photograph as special because of the morning light, the framing of the bears between the converging cornfields, and the ground fog in the background that was lingering as the sun came up gives a kind of a nice mood. The broad view of the bears in their habitat gives a good sense of place, which happens to be the topic of the category that this photograph won. Photography has helped me get in touch with nature and to see how all living things are connected and depend upon one another. The more I learn and experience, the more I am driven to explore the world. It gives me a sense of purpose and a new community to grow into. In 2020, I spent a lot of time observing animals in the wild and became a true believer in anthropomorphism. I see mama bear's emotions when she doesn't see her cub and when it doesn't come when she calls. She shows true panic. Or when two siblings won't eat until the third one arrives safely from the woods, I can see their very protective nature. I'd like to thank Share the View for highlighting the need for all of us to be better stewards of our natural world. Our photos can help draw people in, make them curious, and want to help with conservation.
The Colorado Nature and Wildlife category was sponsored by Colorado Life magazine for the top nature or wildlife photo from Colorado. Fernando Boza photographed Island in the Sky near Silverton, Colorado. And he says, the rocky island in the middle of this beautiful alpine lake gives it its name, and it looks fantastic from the air.
The other striking thing to me is the color, the rock, the contrast between the gray rock and the green, and then the beautiful blue lake, alpine lake.
Not only are you up in the high mountains, but then you see this little island in the middle of the lake that becomes an island. And it looks almost like it could be up in the sky, like you're looking through a hole in the mountain. And it's a little piece of the wilderness that's hard to get to. So somebody had a great experience photographing this great location in Colorado.
To me, the Rockies are Colorado. When I saw the groupings of images for the category of Colorado, this one just jumped out. Composition, color, the angle of view that made it work.
This image is titled Island in the Sky, referencing the fact that the lake itself is called Island Lake, and it's an aerial view of that lake taken with a drone. I think drone photography is very interesting because it gives us the ability to have a different point of view on familiar places. So if you can imagine for a second what a bird sees, say a raven flying over that mountain, if we can see what that view is like, I think that's fantastic, and that's what a drone allows us to do. I did that hike for the first time over a decade ago, and it's one of my favorite hikes in the state. You first get to Ice Lake, which is this beautiful turquoise, and it's that color as a result of the rock powder left from literally thousands of years of glaciers grinding the rock. So those particles are suspended in the water and they refract the light, and we only see the blue portion of the spectrum of light, much for the same reason that the sky looks blue to us. I hiked up there late in the day, and the stormy skies, I thought, gave it a great backdrop. There was one other group there. So before flying the drone, I approached him and asked him if they minded. And actually, they were fine with that. They actually asked me if I would take a group picture of them, and I did. And my point is that being a little more respectful and being a little more tolerant can go a long way so we can all enjoy the outdoors and also get those great bird's eye views that a drone allows us to have.
The category World Heritage Sites was anonymously sponsored. For a scenic or wildlife image at one of 1,121 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, our winner is Wolfpack by Carol Grenier in Yellowstone National Park. These Wapiti Lake Pack members were headed for the carcass of a bison they had taken down the night before.
What I'm loving is, again, the texture of the fur. What really propelled this one to be the winner of the World Heritage Site. This was made in Yellowstone National Park, first national park, created in 1872, but it was the first of its kind in the entire world. The creation of Yellowstone really paved the way for other large-scale landscapes and wildlife that inhabits them to be protected. There were wolves at the time, but by 1930 or so, there were no wolves in Yellowstone. And they were reintroduced in 1995 amidst a lot of controversy. The fact that this image was made in Yellowstone, has a lot of symbolic meaning for all of us as Americans and as citizens of the world.
There are many World Heritage Sites all over the world. It's a great organization that's bringing attention and, in some cases, donations to places that wouldn't otherwise receive it. But in the States, one of our great World Heritage Sites is Yellowstone National Park.
Wolves have become an iconic symbol of the Yellowstone area, which is a World Heritage Site. The whole design is very compelling and it makes you want to go over there and look for these guys.
Hi, I'm Carol Grenier from Carson City, Nevada, and my winning photograph was the Wapiti Lake Wolf Pack in Yellowstone National Park in the winter. We saw a bison with a broken leg the previous evening, and we're told that it had had that broken leg for several weeks and that there was a wolf pack in the area. And when I came back into the park the following morning, it turned out that the wolf pack had taken down that bison and mostly consumed it. The wolf pack was still in the area. So I was able to set up my equipment and spend 4 hours or so photographing the wolf pack and watching their behavior. And I was able to hear the wolves howling to the members of the pack that were up on a hill behind us that we couldn't see. And it was just a great opportunity. You have to be out there and be ready to take advantage of whatever opportunity comes along.
I want to thank everyone who joined us in our celebration of the 2020 Share the View competition. Congratulations to the photographers who shared their finest images of our natural world. I hope you're as inspired as I am by their stories and photos. Thanks also to the judges for the compelling insights and countless hours reviewing the entries. I want to also thank the beneficiary and sponsoring organizations for the important work you do protecting nature and wildlife. Lastly, I'm extremely grateful to the category sponsors who underwrote this year's 10 very special prizes. Remember, the next Share the View contest begins October 15th. Check our website as we get closer to the opening to see the changes in store for 2021. In the meantime, you're invited to visit the top 250 and prize winners all year long on the website sharetheview.contestvenue.com. As Albert Einstein said, look deep into nature and then you will understand everything better. I wish you safe and exciting journeys in the coming year.